So about this time last year, the Florida Maquis was investigating the Fitzgerald. The McCain hadn't occurred yet, and there was a lot of speculation about what may have actually happened, because we knew the story was bunk. The press conference from the Navy was a complete dumpster fire, and the track that they provided through Vessel Finder was literally the most unbelievable thing, and we later proved that to be a complete falsehood based on the AIS data. Well, a story came out, South China Morning Post, that confirms one of my very first theories that I took quite a bit of flack for. And it had to do with AI, and it had to do with submarines and smart mines. Now, this was something that, of course, there wouldn't have been any proof for. There wouldn't have been any evidence for other than the behavior of the Navy. They were trying to hide something, and everyone could see it. What? We didn't know. The physics of what they were saying happened made no sense. The damage above the waterline, maybe, but below the waterline, absolutely not. The fact that after they sent down secret underwater welding teams to patch up the damage while it was still flooded in dry dock before draining the water out, and then telling everyone a month later, oh, by the way, teams have been down there welding up the patches and covering the damage, showed clearly there was something that they didn't want the world to know. They absolutely destroyed any evidence whatsoever of what happened below the waterline. This bulbous bow ridiculousness just disagreed with physics, and as we've seen the pictures of the destroyer turning and the statement from the captain of the ACX Gristle stating that they were running parallel when they hit, it just made absolutely no sense. Well, here's our story, and I think it's going to explain quite a bit. China military develops robotic submarines to launch a new era of sea power. Unmanned AI subs expected in the 2020s could challenge the advantage Western naval powers have in strategic waters like the South China Sea. Now, very oddly, this is the picture the South China Morning Post is choosing to use. And this vessel, right up here, is an Arleigh Burke class destroyer. Now, there is a name on the back here, and I can't figure out what it is because you would need to really, really zoom in. But in their first paragraph, they say some things that I think would tie up a lot of loose ends. See, if they're announcing it now, you know they've been developing prototypes already. China is developing large, smart, and relatively low-cost unmanned submarines that can roam the world's oceans to perform a wide range of missions, from reconnaissance to mine placement to even suicide attacks against enemy vessels, according to scientists involved in these artificial intelligence projects. The autonomous robotic submarines are expected to be deployed in the early 2020s. While not intended to entirely replace human-operated submarines, they will challenge the advantageous position established by Western naval powers after the Second World War. The robotic subs are aimed particularly at the United States forces in strategic waters like the South China Sea, Western Pacific Ocean, the researchers said. And you can read through here, and you can basically see that this is absolutely exactly what the Florida Maquis said could have very well been responsible for the damage under the waterline to the Fitzgerald. They're not very big, but they're incredibly advanced. They can detect a ship literally passively without putting any kind of signature out there, and just swim right up to one particular target and take it out. That's what these things do. And that's what I alleged. That more than likely the Chinese had developed something like this, and the U.S. didn't want to know, and didn't want the world to know, that our destroyers were completely powerless against it. See, if you were going to allow this story to go out to the South China Morning Post, you more than likely would have had to have done some work in the field with it already and seen that it was wildly successful. When you look back through here and you see how this all played out from day one, now it makes sense. Everything makes sense. We know that the Fitz was dead in the water, based on the testimony of the people in the CIC. A submarine like this could have very easily swum right up to the Fitz and zapped it. You see, EMPs don't go through water, but if you can put a submarine right up on the hull, oh yeah, absolutely, you can zap the crap out of it. And forget the fact that we had a statement from the father of one of the sailors who was killed, came to the channel and said specifically that the Fitz inexplicably, 3 weeks prior, lost power out in the middle of nowhere, and it took him 3 hours to get it back up. Nobody told anyone about this. The only reason we know about it is because we were lucky enough to have the father of Xavier Martin at the channel. But of course, this is going to be the standard cock and bull story about all this. I honest to God think, now looking at this, the Fitz got zapped. The Crystal was the ship designed to put it down, hit it, and thought it sunk it, and got downrange and realized that even with the hole beneath the waterline from the submarine, the ramming, it still wasn't going down, and they came back to finish the job and got there too late. There were already other vessels within eye shot, and they couldn't finish the job. So that's why they had to call it in as an accident. And looking at this, honest to God, it makes perfect sense. It makes absolute perfect sense, because the Chinese have said they don't want U.S. Navy destroyers in that region, and we've continued to poke the dragon, so to speak, and just sail vessels through there just for the sake of saying we did so. And so they're like, okay, we're going to poke back. Not saying what they did was right, but you can't say it was unexpected. That's for sure. And now we have this article that literally describes exactly what the effect of one of these submarines would have been. One of these things could have just swum right up to the Fitz and put a mine right on its hull. And swam away. Zapped it. It's hard to see now. I mean, looking back, I would have loved to have had this information a year ago, because it would have explained a lot, but nobody's paying attention to it because it's so far back in history now. With things that we talk about, we've got bigger fish to fry here in our hemisphere. But you can see it here on the South China Morning Post. It's www.scmp.com /news/China/society/article. Or you can just Google China developing unmanned AI submarines launches new era of sea power. And I'm sure that will get you there. The South China Morning Post is an English language website, so you won't need to worry about any kind of a translation. But it's crazy that they would use the Arleigh Burke-class destroyer in this picture for one of these things. And put this out and realize, I suppose, at this point that there's no harm in it, because no one in America is paying attention anymore. We have this real short attention span. But one more time, China is developing large, smart, and relatively low-cost unmanned submarines that can roam the world's oceans to perform a wide range of missions, from reconnaissance to mine placement to even suicide attacks against enemy vessels like the USS Fitzgerald and the USS John McCain, according to scientists involved in these AI projects. So I will leave it there. But you can make your own judgment call, but we talked about this. In fact, one very specific video. U.S. Navy crippled by high-tech Chinese mine 11 months ago. And many, many others just like it here at the Florida Maquis. So thank you so much. Very much appreciate your support. Like, share, subscribe.